Welcome to Fables and Fairy Tales. This is part 4 of my thoughts about Frankenstein, the book, or the modern Prometheus by Mary Shelley. Hubris and virtue. This is very commonly, this Frankenstein book is commonly equated with lots of different stories, but it is connected often with Prometheus, I believe, who was a titan who both created man and gave them fire, and for this was tortured by Zeus, being strapped to a rock while fowls of the air ate his liver. It is also can be connected with, I believe it's Icarus flying too far to the sun with his wax wings that then melted and he fell and drowned in the ocean. Very common trope of someone who is stepping outside their bounds or outside the laws of nature and playing with instruments far bigger than them and things that should not be tinkered with. This is Victor Frankenstein. Somehow he stumbled upon the power to animate life, and he immediately uses it. He steps outside his limitations and his abilities and creates life in a monster that is most likely sewed together from the bodies of many different people to make him, I believe, 8 feet tall. So I don't know if Frankenstein knew anyone who was 8 feet tall, so I doubt he got this from one body, which makes one wonder how he put this all together, especially in that era and their limits of scientific advancements. I mean, the amount of nerves he would have had to connect and weave throughout the body, and the veins and the arteries and all the vasculature just seems beyond its time. But again, we are dealing with a science fiction gothic novel, and so we have to give room and parameters for this book to be able to work. But anyway, so he makes this body and it steps outside his bounds and becomes his own bane, as Tolkien would put it. A creature that becomes his monster, his demon, of his own make, and yet then it destroys his own life. Just as Prometheus stepped outside his bounds and was cast down, and Icarus, with this incredible invention, flew outside his bounds of where he should fly and flew too close to the sun, allowing his hubris to take control of him, and then he died. And so Frankenstein, his hubris leads him astray, and he is then quite thoroughly destroyed by his own invention, his own creation, the monster that he made himself, to the point that even his own monster hated itself. And at least it's left a little vague, but at the end of the book, he promised that he would go and burn himself on a funeral pyre somewhere in the frozen wastelands of the north. And so with that, that's essentially Frankenstein and his hubris getting the best of him. So now, speaking about having power and the ability to do things, but allowing yourself to be limited by wisdom and to stay within the bounds of nature, or essentially to have virtue. That is why anytime that we have power, we need to ask ourselves, what should we do with this? How do I give myself boundaries? What boundaries should I set? What boundaries are there naturally? You can actually look at this also in Jurassic Park, the original movie. Ian Malcolm, who studies chaos theory, said, "Your scientists were so preoccupied with whether or not they could, they didn't stop to think if they should." It's the same Frankenstein and his monster question that's relived in Jurassic Park. So you have the guy who created the park and, hired the scientists that did all the research behind it, and he made the park and didn't think about the ramifications of what could come to pass. And because of his dream of what it would look like and how amazing it would be, he overlooked what could happen, and what we have is an atrocity of man stepping outside his bounds and using hubris and being absorbed by his hubris and wielding the power of God, which he should not have, creating dinosaurs which then slaughtered humans and ate them and destroyed the park, destroyed this man's life and his wealth, and I'm sure he was sued a lot. And so it's a very similar thing that a very similar argument that he did not use wisdom. He did not exercise virtue. He did not have virtue, which you can learn from reading the great books, the Holy Writ, and the old classical books during what should be every human being's early education, which I believe is not really studied anymore, the great classics. And by reading these things, we gain virtue and learn of our limitations and what we should and should not do. That there are things that are within the realm and power of our God and our Creator that we should not tinker with. That science is incredible, but we should be careful what we try to do with it. We should not try and step into the shoes of God. This is beyond us. And in our minds, we may envision how incredible and amazing and beautiful it will be and all the good that will come of it. Even Frankenstein said that he would make a race of creatures who would love him and adore him. When he made one that he abandoned, that then slew everyone he loved and hated him. We must be careful and limit ourselves. Do not allow our hubris to take us over. We must not be prideful and think that we are God. We must remember who is God and do what God would have us do while we remain humble. We should love nature like Elizabeth and Clerval did in the book. They talked a lot about nature. They kept showing Frankenstein nature. And Frankenstein sometimes would love the nature, but he would always go back either into his depression or would seclude himself from nature and be doing his abominations to create this monster. But he should have been one who loved and embraced nature and its limits like Clerval and Elizabeth did. And as they were always trying to get him to do, and trying to get him to embrace nature. So there's a lot said here, but essentially, from my understanding from this book, be careful, beware of hubris, beware of pride. And actually a good summary is what Frankenstein himself said at the end of his life. I can't remember the exact quote, but he said something along the lines of that we should seek tranquility and do not seek ambition. So happiness and peace and tranquility over ambition, pride, and hubris. Here is my summary of Frankenstein and all of my opinions and thoughts as a whole. I believe this is a brilliant book. It's far more cerebral and philosophical than I was expecting. I highly recommend that everyone should basically read this book. It's one of the great ones. It's one of the classics. I haven't watched the recent movie on Netflix by that director. I cannot remember how to say his name. It's Guillermo del Toro. But I have done enough research and listened to enough reviews of this movie that I know I will not like it because of how much it strays from the story. And therefore, I don't ever plan on watching it. I'm not going to waste my time because I know I won't like it. With that said, going back to the book, read this book, study it, maybe even find some lectures on YouTube. That's what I did with some of the scholars who have studied this era and studied Mary Shelley in the book. I highly recommend reading it. Some of my summaries of my thoughts is that Frankenstein, the man, is a fool. He had a high ego, lots of hubris, and he got smashed down by his own creation for his hubris and his massive ego. He stepped into areas and into boundaries that he never should have. He hijacked the spark of life and created a creature, a monster, who then he essentially shirked all his duties to even care for this creature and ran away, hoping it would just disappear. And in so doing, this monster became truly a monster after it was rejected by all of humanity numerous times. It came to hate humanity and began to kill everyone that was dear in the life of Frankenstein. And another area where Frankenstein failed in performing his duties, he didn't tell anyone about this creature. He warned no one, as this creature was going through his life like the Grim Reaper, killing everyone. He also, Frankenstein, didn't do his duty by abandoning his middle brother, Ernst. After his wife died, Frankenstein went gallivanting across the globe hunting the monster, and we don't know what happened to Ernst. Ernst is never mentioned again. He's just left alone. I guess he's the inheritor of the estate, but who knows what happens to him. But eventually, his creation becomes his bane, and Frankenstein is killed, essentially killed by his own monster. Not physically, but through the hunting of the monster. How do we take this for us in our lives? Personally, I think there's different ways we could probably apply this. For us, do not, as Frankenstein said himself to Walton the ship captain, don't seek for ambition, seek for tranquility instead. All in all, I don't think ambition is bad, but I believe it can take over your life, and you can obsess with ambition, and it can destroy your life. So be careful with ambition. Remember the good things in life. Remember your family and your loved ones, and keep them close. Love them and visit them, and make sure they know that you love them and spend time with them, not just in a lab creating your own monster. I believe we can take this in a modern scientific sense too. Are there certain things that scientists and researchers are doing that they should be careful about? I'm not a specialist in AI, and actually some of the podcasts I've been listening to have reassured me that AI probably will not become anything that's going to completely destroy us. Like, say, Skynet in Terminator, not something like that. But AI could destroy us by humans using AI to destroy us. That could happen. AI is already destroying art and literature by people just pumping out AI art and books that is just slop. And also, should we be doing things like cloning? Should we be cloning animals and cloning humans? Is this a step too far? But anyway, in summary, great book. I recommend reading it. I highly recommend it.